It was a Tuesday morning, and the sun was already beating down on the city streets. Inside the gleaming headquarters of Wellington Industries, people were starting their day like any other. Coffee machines hummed, keyboards clicked, and the early birds were already deep in their emails. But someone was running late. Very late. Daniel Wellington Jr. pushed through the revolving glass doors at exactly 9:47 a.m. He was supposed to be in an executive meeting 17 minutes ago, and his father was not going to be happy. Daniel clutched his phone in one hand and an overpriced coffee in the other, the kind that cost more than some people made in an hour. His shoes were Italian leather, probably worth more than most people's monthly rent. Everything about him screamed money and privilege. He was in a rush, eyes glued to his phone screen, thumbs flying as he typed out excuses to his assistant. The morning sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, making the marble floors shine like mirrors. Daniel barely noticed. He'd walked these halls 1,000 times, always in a hurry, always more important than everyone else, at least that's what he thought. On the other side of the building, near the executive elevators, a woman named Rita was doing her job. She'd been doing the same job for 12 years now, starting at 5 in the morning when the building was still quiet and dark. Rita was 57 years old, with kind eyes and hands that showed the years of hard work. Her uniform was simple and practical, and her cart was loaded with cleaning supplies, fresh towels for the executive washrooms, and bags for the trash. Rita took pride in her work. She knew every corner of this building, every stubborn stain, every squeaky wheel on every cart. She knew which executives liked their offices cleaned early and which ones came in late. She knew where the sunlight would hit at different times of day, showing dust that needed to be wiped away. This building wasn't just her workplace. In a way, it was hers. She cared for it like it was her own home. She was pushing her cart toward the supply closet near the elevators when it happened. Daniel came around the corner at full speed, still staring at his phone. He didn't look up. He didn't slow down. He just barreled forward like he owned the place, which technically his family did. The collision was spectacular. Daniel slammed straight into Rita's cart, and his expensive coffee went flying. The cup hit the edge of the cart, flipped through the air in what felt like slow motion, and then exploded all over Daniel's suit. Hot caramel macchiato dripped down his jacket, soaked into his shirt, and splattered across his fancy tie. For a moment, everything froze. Rita's hands flew to her mouth. "Oh my goodness! I'm so sorry!" "I'm so sorry." She immediately grabbed for the cleaning rags on her cart, instinct taking over. After 12 years, her first reaction to any spill was to clean it up. She reached toward Daniel, trying to help, trying to fix the mess. That's when Daniel exploded. "What is wrong with you?" He shouted, loud enough that his voice echoed through the lobby. "Are you blind? Do you have any idea what you've just done?" Rita stepped back, shocked by the anger in his voice. "Sir, I'm so sorry. I didn't see you coming." "Let me help." "Help? You've already helped enough." Daniel's face was red now, his voice getting louder. "This suit costs more than you make in a month. Look at it, it's ruined." People were starting to notice. Employees arriving for work stopped in their tracks. A few people near the elevators turned to watch. Someone in the distance pulled out their phone. But Daniel didn't care. He was on a roll now. All his frustration and anger from being late pouring out onto this woman who just happened to be in his way. "Do you know who I am?" He continued, gesturing wildly. "My father owns this company. I shouldn't have to dodge cleaning carts in my own building. What are you even doing here at this hour? Don't you people have designated times for this?" Rita's face was burning. She could feel everyone watching. She wanted to disappear into the floor. "Sir, I was just doing my job. I clean this area every morning at this time. I'm truly sorry about your suit." "Sorry? Sorry doesn't fix this." Daniel pulled at his stained jacket. "You know what? You shouldn't even be working here. Someone as careless as you is a liability. I'm going to make sure you're fired. Today." The words hung in the air like poison. Rita felt tears starting to well up in her eyes, but she fought them back. She wouldn't cry, not here, not in front of everyone. She'd worked too hard, survived too much to break down now. "People like you," Daniel continued, and his voice took on a cruel edge that made several onlookers wince. "You should be grateful you even have a job. You're here to clean floors, to empty trash cans, to make this place look good for people who actually matter. And you can't even do that without causing problems." Someone in the crowd gasped. Another person shook their head in disgust. At least 3 phones were recording now, but Daniel was too angry to notice or care. Rita just stood there taking it. Her hands were shaking slightly as she gripped the handle of her cart. She was 57 years old and she'd been disrespected before. She'd been invisible before, but this was different. This was public. This was humiliating in a way that cut deep. "I understand, sir," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm very sorry." She didn't argue. She didn't defend herself. She just accepted it, like she'd learned to accept so many things in her life. She slowly turned her cart around and began pushing it away, her head down, her shoulders slumped. The crowd parted for her as she walked. Some people looked at her with pity. Others looked angry, but not at her. At Daniel, but nobody said anything. Nobody stepped in to defend her. They all just watched as this woman, who'd cleaned their offices and restocked their supplies for 12 years, walked away in shame. Daniel watched her go, still fuming. "Unbelievable," he muttered, loud enough for people to hear. "The incompetence in this place." He looked down at his ruined suit one more time, cursed under his breath, and then headed for the elevators. The crowd scattered, people suddenly very interested in getting to their desks or checking their phones. Within minutes, the lobby was back to normal, like nothing had happened. But something had happened. In the bathroom down the hall, Rita stood at the sink, gripping the edge of the counter. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. When had she become so small? When had she learned to just take it? To just accept being treated like she was nothing? She thought about her daughter, Patricia, who was a lawyer in another city. Patricia would be furious if she knew what had just happened. She'd want Rita to fight back, to report it, to stand up for herself. But Rita had been standing up for herself her whole life in quieter ways. She'd raised 3 kids after her husband died young. She'd worked 2 jobs to put them through school. She'd survived breast cancer 5 years ago and still showed up to work the next week. She'd paid off her house, put money away for emergencies, and never asked anyone for help, standing up to a spoiled rich kid who couldn't handle spilled coffee. That was different. That was dangerous. Rita needed this job. The benefits were good, and she'd been planning to work another 8 years until retirement. She couldn't risk losing everything because some entitled young man had a temper tantrum. She wiped her eyes, straightened her uniform, and took a deep breath. Then she went back to work. There were offices to clean, trash to collect, and supplies to restock. Life went on, just like it always did. Meanwhile, Daniel made it to his office on the executive floor. He kept spare clothes here for emergencies, which was lucky. He changed into a fresh suit, combed his hair, and checked himself in the mirror. Good as new. He grabbed his tablet and headed to the conference room, ready to make his excuses about why he was late. The meeting was already in progress when he slipped in. His father, Richard Wellington, gave him a sharp look but didn't say anything. They'd talk later, Daniel knew. But for now, he slid into his seat and tried to focus on the quarterly reports being discussed. By lunchtime, Daniel had completely forgotten about the incident. It was just another minor annoyance in his day, already buried under emails and meetings and the usual chaos of running a division of his father's company. He went to his favorite restaurant with some colleagues, ordered the most expensive thing on the menu, and spent the meal talking about his new car. He had no idea that the videos were already spreading. The first one had been uploaded within 10 minutes of the incident. An employee named Kevin had recorded the whole thing from start to finish. He'd posted it to his personal Twitter account with the caption, "This is how the rich treat working people. The son of our CEO just publicly humiliated a cleaning lady over spilled coffee. This is Daniel Wellington Jr., everyone. Remember this face." The video started going viral immediately. By early afternoon, it had been retweeted thousands of times. People were adding their own commentary, sharing it to other platforms, tagging news outlets. Someone created a hashtag Wellington Bully. Within hours, it was trending. The story had everything people loved to hate: wealth, privilege, arrogance, and a clear villain mistreating someone who couldn't fight back. Everyone had experienced something similar or knew someone who had. Everyone had felt small at some point, been yelled at by someone who thought they were better. Rita became a symbol for every person who'd ever been disrespected at work and had to just take it with a smile. The comments rolled in by the thousands. People were furious. They demanded Daniel be fired. They called for boycotts of Wellington Industries. They dug up other stories of Daniel's entitled behavior, posts from his social media showing off his wealth. and making tone-deaf comments about working hard. News outlets picked up the story by evening. Millionaire's son caught on camera berating cleaning lady, read one headline. Another said, Tech company CEO's son calls worker lucky to have a job after spilling coffee on himself. The videos played on loop on social media, each view adding to the outrage. And through it all, Daniel had no idea. He went about his day, completely oblivious to the storm brewing online. He posted a photo from dinner at an exclusive steakhouse that evening, smiling with friends, not a care in the world, but in offices across the city. In boardrooms and break rooms, people were watching the video and talking. Wellington Industries' social media accounts were being flooded with angry messages. The company's stock price started to dip, and somewhere in the executive suite, someone was going to have to tell Richard Wellington that his son had become the most hated man on the internet. The night was quiet as Rita sat in her small but tidy living room. Her phone had been ringing all evening with calls from former co-workers, friends from church, even neighbors who'd seen the video. Everyone was outraged on her behalf. Everyone wanted to know if she was okay, what she was going to do, whether she'd been fired. Rita didn't know what to say to any of them. She was embarrassed, hurt, and exhausted. But more than anything, she was worried about tomorrow. Would she still have a job? Would everyone at work look at her differently? Would she forever be known as that cleaning lady who got yelled at by the boss's son? She finally turned off her phone and went to bed, but sleep didn't come easy. She lay there in the dark, replaying the morning over and over in her mind, wishing she'd said something different, done something different, been somewhere else. She had no way of knowing that everything was about to change, that the collision in the lobby that morning hadn't just ruined a suit. It had set in motion a series of events that would transform not just her life, but the entire company, and would force a spoiled young man to finally face the consequences of his actions. But that was tomorrow's story. Tonight, Rita was just a tired woman trying to forget the worst day she'd had in years, with no idea that the world had seen it too, and the world was very, very angry. Rita woke up Wednesday morning to the sound of her phone buzzing nonstop. She'd turned it off before bed, but apparently her daughter had other ideas. Patricia had a spare key and must have come by early, turned the phone back on, and was now calling repeatedly. Rita finally answered, her voice thick with sleep. Patricia? What's wrong? It's 6 a.m. Mom, have you seen it? Have you seen what's happening online? Rita sat up in bed, confused. Seen what? Honey, I just woke up. The video, Mom. Someone recorded what happened yesterday. It's everywhere. I mean everywhere. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. The news channels are picking it up. Mom, millions of people have seen it. Rita's heart sank. She felt sick to her stomach. What do you mean, millions? I'm coming over. Don't go to work yet. We need to talk. An hour later, Patricia was sitting at Rita's kitchen table with her laptop open, showing her mother the extent of what had happened. Video after video, comment after comment, article after article. Rita watched herself being humiliated over and over again, and each time felt like a fresh wound. This is awful, Rita whispered. Everyone's seen this? Everyone knows? Mom, people are on your side. Look at these comments. People are furious at that spoiled brat. They're demanding he be fired. There are already 3 different online petitions. Rita shook her head. I don't want this. I just want to go to work and do my job. Mom, you can't be serious. After the way he treated you? You should sue. I've already talked to some colleagues. You have a solid case for workplace harassment, emotional distress, hostile work environment. And then what? I lose my job? My health insurance? I have 8 years until retirement, Patricia. 8 years until I get my full pension. I can't risk that. Patricia looked at her mother with frustration and love mixed together. You've spent your whole life putting everyone else first. When are you going to stand up for yourself? I stand up for myself every day just by surviving, Rita said quietly. You don't understand what it's like, honey. I know you mean well, but this is my life, my job, my decision. They argued for another hour, but Rita was firm. She was going to work. She was going to keep her head down. The internet would forget about this in a week, and life would go back to normal. That's what she told herself as she put on her uniform and drove to Wellington Industries. But nothing was normal when she arrived. Security at the front desk looked at her with new recognition. People she'd never spoken to stopped her in the hallway to ask if she was okay. Her supervisor called her into the office first thing. not to fire her, but to tell her she could take a few days off if she needed to. The whole building felt different, charged with an energy Rita didn't understand. What she didn't know was that across town, in a corner office with a view of the entire city, her boss's boss was having the worst morning of his life. Richard Wellington had built Wellington Industries from nothing. He'd grown up poor, worked his way through community college while holding down 2 jobs, and spent his 20s doing exactly what Rita did, cleaning offices and scrubbing floors. He'd saved every penny, learned everything he could about business, and slowly built a small tech company into a major player in the industry. He'd tried to teach his son about hard work and respect. He'd really tried. But somewhere along the way, Daniel had learned all the wrong lessons. He'd seen the wealth but missed the values. He'd inherited the privilege but none of the humility. And now at 7:30 a.m. on a Wednesday morning, Richard was sitting in his office watching his son humiliate a cleaning lady on repeat. His assistant had sent him the video late last night with a message. "We have a serious problem." Serious didn't begin to cover it. Richard's phone was ringing off the hook. The board of directors wanted an emergency meeting. The PR department was in full crisis mode. The company's social media accounts were being flooded with thousands of angry messages. Their stock price had dropped 2% overnight, which didn't sound like much until you calculated that in actual dollars. Millions. His son's tantrum had cost the company millions. But that wasn't what made Richard angry. What made him angry was watching that video and seeing everything he'd tried not to become. He saw the entitled boss, the kind of person who looked down on working people, the kind of person he'd fought against his whole career. And that person was his son. Richard made a decision. He called his assistant. "Set up an emergency board meeting for this afternoon and find out everything you can about Rita Martinez. I want to know her history with the company, her performance reviews, everything, and I want to meet with her personally. Today." Meanwhile, Daniel was having a very different kind of morning. He woke up to over 200 notifications on his phone. At first, he thought maybe he'd gone viral for something cool. Maybe that photo from the restaurant last night. But as he started reading, his confusion turned to anger. People were calling him names. Terrible names. They were saying he was a spoiled brat, a bully, that he didn't deserve his position. There were articles about him. News articles. With his picture. Videos of him yelling at that cleaning lady yesterday. Daniel's first instinct wasn't shame or regret. It was defensiveness. He called his assistant, his voice sharp. "Why didn't anyone tell me about this? How did this get so out of control?" His assistant, a patient woman named Helen who'd been dealing with Daniel's moods for 3 years, took a deep breath before responding. "Sir, I sent you 5 messages last night and 3 emails. You didn't respond to any of them." Daniel vaguely remembered his phone buzzing during dinner, but he'd been having too much fun to check. "Well, what are we doing about it?" "Get PR on this. Issue a statement. Say it was taken out of context or something. The PR team is working on it, but sir, your father wants to see you. Immediately." That made Daniel pause. His father didn't usually get involved in this kind of thing. "Fine. Tell him I'll be there in an hour." He said immediately, "Sir." Daniel showed up at his father's office 45 minutes later, still not quite grasping the severity of the situation. He walked in with the same confidence he always had, ready to laugh this whole thing off with his dad. Richard didn't laugh. "Sit down," he said, his voice cold. Daniel sat, suddenly feeling like he was 10 years old again, being called to the principal's office. "Do you understand what you've done?" Richard asked. "Dad, it was just a misunderstanding. She ran into me, ruined my suit. I was frustrated. People are blowing this way out of proportion." "Watch it again." Richard turned his computer monitor around. The video was queued up and ready to play. "I don't need to watch it again. I was there. Watch it again." Daniel watched, and for the first time he saw it from the outside. He saw how angry he looked, how loud he was, how the woman, Rita, just stood there taking it. He saw the people watching in the background, their faces showing shock and disgust. He heard his own words. "People like you should be grateful you even have a job." But even seeing it, Daniel still didn't fully get it. "Okay, fine, maybe I came on a bit strong. I'll apologize. We can make this go away." Richard stood up, walked to the window, and looked out at the city for a long moment before speaking. "When I was your age, I was cleaning offices at night and going to school during the day. I scrubbed toilets, Daniel. I emptied trash cans. I did exactly what Rita Martinez does. I know, Dad, you've told me. No, you've heard me. You've never listened. You've never understood. Richard turned back to face his son. That woman you humiliated yesterday? She's been with this company for 12 years. 12 years. Do you know what she does? She cleans. She does a hell of a lot more than that. Richard picked up a folder from his desk. After you left yesterday, I had someone pull her file. Do you know we have an employee suggestion program? Daniel shrugged. I guess. Rita Martinez has submitted 14 suggestions over the past 12 years. 14 ideas to improve the company. And do you know how many were implemented? Daniel didn't answer. 3 of them saved us hundreds of thousands of dollars. One of them, a recycling and waste management program she designed, saves us over $200,000 a year. Another one, a security protocol she noticed was flawed, prevented what could have been a major data breach. Daniel was quiet now, really quiet, for the first time since walking in. And do you know what we gave her for these ideas? Richard continued. Nothing. There's supposed to be a profit-sharing component to the suggestion program. But due to administrative oversight, she was never credited, never paid. This company owes her over $75,000, Daniel. $75,000 that a woman making $32,000 a year never received. The number hung in the air between them. The woman you called careless, incompetent, lucky to have a job, she's been making this company better while you've been coasting on my name and my reputation. Dad, I didn't know. That's the problem. You didn't know because you never looked. You never saw her. You walk past people like Rita every single day and you don't see them. They're invisible to you. And that ends now. Richard sat back down at his desk. Here's what's going to happen. We're having a board meeting this afternoon to discuss how to handle this situation. You will be there. You will listen, and you will accept whatever consequences come from this. Consequences? Dad, come on, it's me. I made a mistake. You're 28 years old, Daniel. At some point, mistakes have consequences. You've been protected your whole life. By me, by your mother, by money, by privilege. But not anymore. This isn't just about you now. This affects the entire company. Hundreds of employees. Their families. Our reputation. Everything I've built. Daniel left his father's office shaken in a way he hadn't expected. He'd thought his dad would be angry, sure, but he'd also thought they'd handle it the way they always handled things. Make it go away. Move on. But this felt different. Back in the building, Rita was trying to work, but it was impossible. People kept approaching her. Some were kind, offering support. Others just wanted to satisfy their curiosity. To see the woman from the video up close. By lunchtime, she felt like an animal in a zoo. She was eating alone in a corner of the cafeteria when someone sat down across from her. It was Helen, Daniel's assistant, looking nervous. Mrs. Martinez, I'm so sorry to interrupt your lunch. Mr. Wellington, the senior Mr. Wellington, would like to meet with you this afternoon. At 2 o'clock, if that works for you. Rita's hand started shaking. This was it. She was being fired. They were going to let her go quietly. Maybe offer her a small severance to keep her quiet. Do I have a choice? Rita asked quietly. Helen's face softened. Of course you do. But Mrs. Martinez, I don't think this is what you're worried it is. Mr. Wellington Sr. is a good man. Just please hear him out. At exactly 2 o'clock, Rita walked into Richard Wellington's office. It was the first time in 12 years she'd been in this part of the building. The carpet was thicker here, the walls decorated with expensive art. Everything whispered money and power. Richard stood when she entered, which surprised her. Bosses didn't usually stand for cleaning ladies. Mrs. Martinez, please sit down. Can I get you anything? Coffee, water? No, thank you, Rita said, perching on the edge of the chair like she might need to run at any moment. Richard sat across from her, and for a moment, he didn't speak. He just looked at her like he was trying to figure out how to start. Mrs. Martinez, first, I want to apologize. For my son, for what happened, for how you were treated. There's no excuse for it. Rita nodded but didn't say anything. Second, I want you to know that what happened has started an investigation, and in the course of that investigation we discovered something. He slid the folder across the desk. These are copies of your employee suggestions over the years. Did you know that several of them were implemented? Rita blinked. I submitted ideas, yes, through the system, but I never heard back about most of them. That's because someone dropped the ball. Multiple people, actually. Your ideas were implemented, Mrs. Martinez. They've saved this company a significant amount of money, and according to our own policies, you should have been compensated for them. You should have received recognition. He told her about the $75,000, about the recycling program, about the security protocol, about all the ways her ideas had shaped the company. Rita listened, and for the first time since yesterday morning, she felt something other than shame. She felt seen. Mr. Wellington, I don't understand. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know. You deserve to know that your work matters, that you matter, and because I want to ask you something. Richard leaned forward. We're having a company-wide meeting on Friday. I want you to be there. I want you to tell your story. Not about what happened with Daniel, but about your work here, your ideas, what you see every day that the rest of us miss. Me? Speak in front of everyone? Rita's voice was small. I don't know if I can. I think you can. I think you're a lot stronger than you give yourself credit for. Rita sat there overwhelmed. Everything was happening too fast. Yesterday she was invisible. Today she was internet famous for all the wrong reasons, and now the CEO was asking her to speak at a company meeting? Can I think about it? She asked. Of course. Take all the time you need. But Mrs. Martinez, Rita, if I may call you that, I hope you'll consider it. Because this company needs to hear from people like you. We need to remember that good ideas and hard work can come from anywhere, from anyone. Rita left the office in a daze. The building looked the same, but everything felt different. She'd walked in this morning expecting to be fired. She was walking out with a check for $75,000 in back pay and an invitation to speak at a company meeting. She called Patricia from her car. You're not going to believe what just happened. And across the city on social media, the story kept spreading. The video had been viewed over 10 million times now. News outlets were calling it a watershed moment, a conversation starter about class, privilege, and respect in the workplace. People were sharing their own stories of being mistreated at work, of being invisible, of being talked down to by people who thought they were better. Rita Martinez had become a symbol. She didn't ask for it, didn't want it, but there it was. The question now was what she was going to do with it. Friday's meeting was 2 days away, and the whole company was buzzing with anticipation. Everyone had seen the video. Everyone knew something big was coming, and somewhere in his apartment, Daniel was starting to realize that his life was about to change in ways he couldn't control, couldn't buy his way out of, couldn't smooth over with charm or connections. The storm that started with spilled coffee was just beginning, and before it was over, nothing at Wellington Industries would ever be the same. Thursday night, Rita couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the meeting tomorrow, about standing in front of hundreds of people, about having all those eyes on her. She'd spent the last 2 days going back and forth, almost calling Richard Wellington a dozen times to tell him she couldn't do it, but something kept stopping her. Maybe it was her daughter's words, echoing in her head. When are you going to stand up for yourself? Maybe it was the $75,000 check sitting on her kitchen counter, proof that her work had mattered all along. Or maybe it was simpler than that. Maybe she was just tired of being invisible. She'd written some notes, crossed them out, written new ones. Nothing felt right. How do you sum up 12 years of work in a few minutes? How do you explain what it feels like to care for a building like it's your own? To take pride in clean floors and stocked supply closets? To notice the little things that everyone else walks past? Around midnight, she gave up trying to write a speech. She'd just speak from the heart. That's all she knew how to do anyway. Across town, Daniel was having his own sleepless night, but for very different reasons. The last few days had been brutal. Everywhere he went online, he saw his face attached to think pieces about privilege and entitlement. Former classmates from college had come forward with stories about his behavior. Old girlfriends talked about how he'd treated service workers on dates. Even some of his so-called friends had distanced themselves, suddenly too busy to return his calls. His social media accounts had become toxic wastelands. He'd made them private, but that hadn't stopped the flood of friend requests from people who just wanted to send him angry messages. Someone had created a parody account that was getting more followers than his real one. But the worst part was his father. Richard had barely spoken to him since their meeting. No calls, no texts, no drop by my office like he used to do. Just silence. And somehow that silence was louder than any lecture could have been. Daniel had tried to talk to his mother, hoping she'd smooth things over like she usually did. But even she seemed different this time. "You're 28 years old, Daniel," she'd said on the phone. "Your father and I won't be around forever. What kind of man are you going to be?" He didn't have an answer for that. The board meeting on Wednesday had been a nightmare. Daniel had to sit there while board members, many of whom had known him since he was a kid, discussed his behavior like he wasn't even in the room. Some wanted him fired immediately. Others suggested mandatory training. One older woman who'd been on the board for 15 years had simply said, "Richard, what would you want done if this was anyone else's son?" The meeting had ended without a resolution, but Daniel knew something was coming. He could feel it. Friday morning arrived with cloudy skies that matched Rita's mood. She put on her best dress, the one she usually saved for church on Easter. Patricia had driven up from the city to be there, sitting in the parking lot right now, ready to cheer her mother on. The company-wide meeting was scheduled for 10 o'clock in the main auditorium. Rita had never been in there before. When she walked in at 9:30, she was stunned. The room was huge, with tiered seating that could hold over 300 people. There was a stage with proper lighting, a podium with a microphone, and large screens on either side. Her stomach did a flip. This was real. This was actually happening. Richard found her standing near the back, looking pale. "Rita, are you okay? Do you need anything?" "I think I need to throw up," she said honestly. He smiled kindly. "I was terrified my first time speaking to a big crowd too. But you know what I learned? They're not here to judge you. They're here to listen. And what you have to say is worth hearing. What if I mess up? What if I freeze? Then you freeze and we'll figure it out. But I don't think you will. You've been showing up and doing hard things your whole life. This is just one more." By 9:45, the auditorium was filling up fast. Employees streamed in, talking in hushed voices. Everyone knew what this meeting was about. Everyone had seen the video. The energy in the room was electric with anticipation. Daniel arrived at 9:50, slipping into a seat near the back. He'd thought about not coming, but his father had made it clear that wasn't an option. He wore sunglasses even though he was inside, hoping nobody would notice him, but people noticed. Heads turned, whispers spread. He sank lower in his seat. At exactly 10 o'clock, Richard walked onto the stage. The room fell silent. "Thank you all for being here," he began, his voice carrying easily through the sound system. "I know this has been a difficult week for our company. What happened on Tuesday morning was unacceptable, and it's forced all of us to take a hard look at who we are and what we stand for." He paused, looking out at the sea of faces. "I started this company 30 years ago with a simple belief that every person has value, that good ideas can come from anywhere, and that how we treat each other matters more than anything else we do." Some people in the audience nodded. Others sat perfectly still, waiting. On Tuesday, my son violated those principles. He treated a valued employee with disrespect and cruelty. And in doing so, he disrespected all of you. And he disrespected everything this company is supposed to represent. Daniel felt every eye in the room turn toward him, even though most people couldn't see him in the back. He wanted to disappear. "But something else happened this week too," Richard continued. "We discovered something that should never have been hidden in the first place. We discovered that one of our employees has been making this company better for years, and we never acknowledged it. We never thanked her. We never even saw her." He gestured toward the side of the stage. "I'd like to introduce you to Rita Martinez. Rita has been with Wellington Industries for 12 years. Most of you have probably seen her, maybe even said good morning to her in the hallway, but I'm willing to bet most of you don't really know her. Today that changes." Rita walked onto the stage and the applause started immediately. It wasn't polite corporate applause. It was real, genuine, supportive. Some people were standing. More joined them. Within seconds, the entire auditorium was on its feet, clapping for a woman most of them had never really noticed before. Rita stood at the podium, overwhelmed. The applause went on for almost a full minute before it finally died down, and people took their seats again. She gripped the edges of the podium and took a deep breath. "I'm not very good at public speaking," she started, and her voice shook a little. "I'm much better at cleaning." A few people laughed, and it was kind laughter, encouraging. "I've worked here for 12 years. Every morning I come in at 5 a.m. when the building is quiet and dark. I clean the offices, restock the supplies, empty the trash. It's simple work, but I've always tried to do it well." She paused, gathering her courage. "Over the years I've noticed things, little problems that nobody else seemed to see. A recycling bin that was always overflowing, a security door that didn't close properly, supply costs that seemed too high. And I thought, maybe I could help fix these things. Rita told them about the suggestion program, about submitting ideas anonymously, never knowing if anyone even read them. She told them about seeing some of her ideas implemented and feeling proud, even without recognition, just knowing she'd made things a little better. Mr. Wellington told me this week that some of my suggestions saved the company money, a lot of money. I didn't do it for money. I did it because this building, in a way, it's mine too. I take care of it. I see it every day in ways other people don't. The broken tile in the third-floor bathroom, the window that leaks when it rains, the coffee machine that needs to be cleaned more often. People were leaning forward now, really listening. When you clean a place for 12 years, you learn its secrets. You know which departments stay late, who leaves their desks messy, who always says thank you when you empty their trash. You become part of the place even if nobody knows your name. Her voice grew stronger as she spoke. I'm not just a cleaning lady. None of us are just anything. The security guard who checks your ID every morning. He's a father of 3 who's putting all his kids through college. The cafeteria worker who makes your coffee. She's taking night classes to become a nurse. The maintenance worker who fixes things. He's a veteran who served our country for 12 years. The room was absolutely silent now. You could have heard a pin drop. We all have stories. We all have value. We all matter. And maybe, just maybe, if we took the time to see each other, really see each other, we'd all be better for it. Rita looked out at the audience, at all those faces looking back at her. What happened this week, it hurt. I won't lie about that. Being yelled at in front of everyone, being told I should be grateful just to have a job, it made me feel small. But you know what? I'm not small. None of us are. We're all just people, trying to do our best, trying to get by, trying to make something good out of our lives. She took a breath. I don't want to be famous for being yelled at. I don't want to be the victim in some viral video. I want to be known for my work, for my ideas, for the 12 years I've spent making this building a better place. That's what matters to me. When Rita finished speaking, there was a moment of silence. Then the applause started again, even louder than before. People were wiping their eyes. Several employees were openly crying. The applause went on, and Rita stood there, no longer invisible, finally seen. Richard returned to the stage and stood beside her. Rita has agreed to take on a new role here at Wellington Industries. She'll be our Director of Operational Innovation and Employee Engagement. Her job will be to create a real program where every employee at every level can contribute ideas and innovations. And this time, people will be properly recognized and compensated for their contributions. More applause, even louder now. But that's not all, Richard continued, and his voice took on a harder edge. We also need to address what happened and make sure it never happens again. This company was built on respect, and we lost sight of that. So there will be changes. He looked toward the back of the auditorium where Daniel was still trying to hide. Daniel Wellington, please come to the stage. Every head in the room turned. Daniel sat frozen for a moment, hoping he'd heard wrong. But his father's voice came again, firm and clear. Daniel, now. The walk to the stage felt like the longest walk of Daniel's life. Every step was agony. He could feel people staring, judging, hating. When he finally made it to the stage, he stood as far from the microphone as possible. Richard wasn't having it. Come here. It wasn't a request. Daniel moved to the podium. His father stepped aside, leaving him alone in the spotlight. Daniel started, his voice cracking. I want to apologize. For what happened. For how I acted. It was wrong. It sounded hollow even to his own ears. Scripted, fake. Richard stepped forward. That's not good enough. Tell them what's really going to happen. Daniel swallowed hard. This was the part he'd been dreading. I'm being removed from my position as Vice President of Business Development. And for the next year, I'll be working in various entry-level positions throughout the company, including facilities management. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Someone whispered, "No way." Another person said, "About time." Richard addressed the room again. My son is 28 years old. He's had every advantage, every opportunity, and he's wasted them by thinking he's better than everyone else. So he's going to learn what it means to actually work. He's going to spend time in the mailroom, the cafeteria, the warehouse, and yes, on the cleaning staff. He's going to see this company the way most of you see it every day. Daniel stood there, humiliated, angry, and something else he couldn't quite name. Maybe it was shame, real shame for the first time in his life. And if he refuses, Richard said, looking directly at his son, he'll be terminated and cut off completely. This isn't punishment. This is education, the education he should have gotten years ago. The meeting ended soon after. People filed out, buzzing with conversation. Some were excited about Rita's new position. Others were shocked by Daniel's demotion. Everyone had an opinion. Rita was surrounded immediately by well-wishers and colleagues. People shook her hand, hugged her, told her their own stories. She felt like she was in a dream. Daniel slipped out a side exit, ignoring the few reporters who'd somehow gotten wind of the meeting and were waiting outside. He sat in his car for a long time, not starting it, just sitting. His whole life had been turned upside down in less than a week. From VP to mailroom clerk, from respected to ridiculed, from privileged to punished. But somewhere in the back of his mind, a tiny voice whispered something he wasn't ready to admit yet. Maybe he deserved it. The sun broke through the clouds as the afternoon wore on. Rita drove home with Patricia, both of them still processing what had just happened. "You were amazing, Mom," Patricia kept saying. "I'm so proud of you." Rita looked at the check in her purse, thought about her new job title, remembered the standing ovation. It all felt surreal. Tuesday morning she'd been invisible. Friday afternoon she was somebody, not because of what happened to her, but because of what she'd done. Her work, her ideas. Her voice. Change was coming to Wellington Industries. Real change. The kind that starts from the bottom up and shakes everything loose. And at the center of it all was a 57-year-old woman who just wanted to do her job well, and a 28-year-old man who was about to learn what that actually meant. Monday would bring new challenges. But for now, for this moment, Rita let herself feel something she hadn't felt in a long time. Pride. Monday morning came too quickly for Daniel. He'd spent the entire weekend in his apartment, curtains drawn, phone off, just sitting in the dark and thinking. His friends had stopped calling. His social media was still a disaster. And in just a few hours he'd have to report to the mailroom like some college intern. At 7:30 a.m., he pulled into the Wellington Industries parking lot, but instead of heading to his usual spot in the executive garage, he had to park in the regular employee lot. It was a small thing, but it felt symbolic. Everything about his life was changing. He walked into the building through the main entrance, not the private executive elevator he'd always used. People recognized him. Some looked away quickly. Others stared openly. A few whispered to each other. Daniel kept his head down and kept walking. The mailroom was in the basement, a place Daniel had never been in 12 years of working at this company. He took the stairs down, following the signs, and pushed open a heavy metal door. Inside, 3 people were already sorting through bins of mail and packages. They all looked up when Daniel entered. The awkward silence lasted about 5 seconds before a man in his 40s with graying hair stepped forward. "You must be Daniel. I'm Frank. I run the mailroom." He stuck out his hand. Daniel shook it, surprised by the firm grip. "Yeah, hi. These are my guys. That's Tommy. He's been here 8 years. And that's Luis. He's been with us for 5. We start at 7, so you're a bit late, but it's your first day. Tomorrow, be on time." There was no hostility in Frank's voice, but there was no special treatment either. Daniel was just another worker now. "Right, sorry. What should I do?" Frank handed him a scanner. "See these bins? They're organized by floor and department. You scan each piece of mail, sort it into the right bin, and when a bin is full, you deliver it. Simple enough?" Daniel looked at the mountain of mail waiting to be sorted. "How much comes in every day?" "Couple thousand pieces, give or take. Plus packages. We're usually done with morning sorting by 9. Then we do deliveries until 11. Afternoon mail comes in at 1 and we do it all over again. You'll get the hang of it." For the first hour, Daniel worked in silence. His back started hurting from bending over the bins. The scanner was heavier than it looked. He made mistakes, putting mail in the wrong sections, having to fish it back out. Tommy corrected him a few times, patient but matter-of-fact. Around 8:30, Frank came over. "You doing okay?" "Yeah," Daniel lied. His feet hurt, his back hurt, and he'd only been here an hour. "You know, your dad used to do this kind of work. Bet he told you that." "He mentioned it. He ever tell you about the time he worked 3 jobs in 1 week? Day job at a warehouse, night job cleaning offices, weekend job doing yard work. Man barely slept, but he did what he had to do." Frank went back to sorting mail, leaving Daniel with that thought. By 9 o'clock, Daniel's cart was loaded with sorted mail. Frank showed him the delivery route, floor by floor, department by department. Don't just drop the mail and run. Say good morning, be polite. These people are your colleagues now. The deliveries were exhausting. Daniel pushed the heavy cart from floor to floor, dropping off mail at each department. Most people were polite but distant. A few ignored him completely. One older woman in accounting looked at him and said, "Well, well, how the mighty have fallen." He didn't respond. What could he say? By lunchtime, Daniel was wiped out. He'd been on his feet for 5 hours straight, lifting, sorting, pushing, delivering. His expensive shoes weren't made for this kind of work. He had a blister forming on his heel. He bought a sandwich from the cafeteria and sat alone at a corner table. He watched the room, really watched it for the first time. Groups of people laughing together. Colleagues sharing food. The easy camaraderie of people who actually knew each other. Daniel had eaten in this cafeteria hundreds of times, but always with other executives, always separate, always above. Now he was just another employee, and he'd never felt more alone. Meanwhile, 3 floors up, Rita was having a very different first day in her new role. She'd been given an office. An actual office with a door and a window and her name on a placard outside. Rita had walked past it 3 times before she believed it was real. Inside there was a desk with a computer, a bookshelf, and even a small plant someone had left as a welcome gift. Her first official meeting was at 10 with the HR director and 2 people from operations. They wanted to discuss how to structure the new employee innovation program. Rita had spent all weekend making notes, preparing ideas, terrified she'd mess up. But once the meeting started, something shifted. These people actually wanted to hear what she had to say. They took notes when she spoke. They asked questions about her ideas. They treated her like an expert. "One thing I've always noticed," Rita said, gaining confidence, "is that the people who do the actual work every day see problems that management never sees. The cafeteria workers know which equipment breaks down constantly. The security guards know which doors don't lock properly. The maintenance crew knows which systems are inefficient." The HR director nodded enthusiastically. "So we need a system where those observations can be easily reported and quickly evaluated." Exactly. And not just reported anonymously. People should be able to put their names on their ideas, get credit, have conversations about solutions, make it collaborative instead of just a suggestion box nobody checks. They spent 2 hours designing the framework for the program. By the end of the meeting, Rita felt energized in a way she hadn't felt in years. This was real. She was actually making a difference. Her phone rang just as she was settling back into her office. It was her daughter Patricia. "Mom, how's the first day? Are you loving it?" "Honey, I just designed a whole program." Me. People listened to me. "I have an office with a window." Patricia laughed. "I told you. You're amazing. You've always been amazing. Now everyone else gets to see it too."